So I'm Susie Dykeman, and I just want to thank you all so much for coming and giving us the chance to share our art with you. It's very exciting. So about me, so after a lifetime of dabbling with art, I started painting more seriously at the beginning of the pandemic, which makes sense. I've explored various types of styles and media, and I've kind of settled on working with acrylic, with abstract acrylic and collage. Um, I've settled on working abstractly because it's a surprisingly satisfying way to explore art. And it's an antidote to all the structure and planning that you have to do in your daily life. So, you know, when you put down a mark or a shape or a color, whether it's paint or charcoal or a collage piece, and you're doing it intuitively and spontaneously just based on your preferences and just discernment and impulses. And then you just do that over and over, all the while also stepping back to analyze things in a more considered way to shape how the piece is evolving. So then you just keep repeating that process, and you can really get lost in it and lost in the flow of it. And it's just a very nice practice. And as you keep working on a piece, it'll start getting shaped and start to be more satisfying and more satisfying until you decide that it's done. And done can be a tricky thing to decide on, particularly with an abstract piece that doesn't have a plan to it. But really, it just means that you've arrived at a point where the piece has an overall pleasing composition that can kind of catch your eye across the room. And then there perhaps a good arrangement of contrasting elements that help your eye to travel around the whole piece and don't leave any dead spots in the piece. And so that'll give you an overall feel for the piece. But then as you approach closer, there might be more interesting colors and textures and marks and details that reward some closer inspection. So in other words, it becomes something that you would want to live with and revisit over and over again. And I think that's where a particular collector might connect with a particular piece because it catches their eye from across the room and they see the composition and maybe like the color scheme. And then when they get closer, they also like what they see and like inspecting all the details and so forth, and feel that they could, that's the one that they could live with in their living space. So when we look at the works that I have here, the first piece is book collage, which means that the elements came from taking apart old books. I started working on it when I had assembled that interesting palette with the pale blues and greens and kind of peachy color and that interesting rusty color. So that inspired me to get started and start putting it together. And then the black shapes are there to help you travel around the whole piece, provides a little contrast to make sure that the whole, all the areas of the piece sort of come alive. This next one started out as a painting, which you can kind of see peeking through. But at some point I decided I wanted to simplify it to take it in another direction. And so I used some paint and collage to simplify it down. And you'll hear that a lot. A lot of folks will talk about having multiple layers on a piece. So that's just part of the process of it evolving. But when I had put the paint and collage on, it just really struck me. And so I like the simplicity of this one, and I stopped there. This next painting reminds me of a dream or a fairy tale. Now, Jung says that the hallmark of a fairy tale is that they're stripped down to this archetypal simplicity, as in the prince had a green shirt and a golden sword. It doesn't go into a lot of detail and extra wording. And it's those archetypal elements that are preserved and passed down over the thousands of years as the tale is passed down through time. So here it's something like there's a white tree and a full moon and a creek that unspooled like the collar of a king's robes. And so it's got kind of a flatness and simplicity that to it that's kind of the hallmark of a dream or a fairy tale. And even though it's kind of representational, the imagery still arose spontaneously in that same process that I work with shapes and things emerging as I keep working on the piece. So it came out of that same intuitive process.
The colors are definitely like regal.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay, these last two, this one and the next one, they're both abstract acrylic. This is the kind of work that I'm doing a lot these days. So they're abstract acrylic with some additional collage pieces and marks made with charcoal or with scratching through layers of paint. I'm particularly fond of this one right now because I'm happy with the colors and the line work and the overall composition of it. So this is a favorite right now.
It's kind of funny how we change between one and another, isn't it?
Yeah, that we like one day and the next. And this last one, you can see a similar mix of paint and lines and collage and that beautiful gray green that's showing up all over my work these days. So that's a theme that keeps coming back. And that's it. Those are my pieces.